What sparked me into realising how F-U-C-K-E-D I was walking down the street with my fiance and we were not in a good place. We were off our heads. Here's my eldest daughter walking towards us with her friend at the time, and I've just gone, "Hey, Lay, how you going?" And she looked at me and said, "I fucking hate you." That was what flicked the switch, because I never wanted to bring a daughter into the world that hated her father. And I went home and punched a wall or two and broke my hands, and I was just in tears, and it was time to do something. There's moments in your life that you remember more than others, but that one really sticks solid in my mind, that was the turning point to get help. It's around 35, 40 years before someone who's been abused, comes out and tells their story. It's a lot to hang on to. I know that. Mm-hmm. And am I fully recovered? No. And it's a one day at a time program, but I'm a lot better than what I was 8 years ago, that's for sure.
Sometimes the stories that shape us the most are the ones that take the longest to tell. My guest today spent years in the public eye as a professional footballer with St Kilda. From the outside, it looked like the dream, elite sport, competition, success. But behind that public life was a private reality that few people knew. Owen is one of the growing number of brave men who've chosen to speak out about something that for decades remained hidden in sport and society: sexual abuse and the long journey of living with that trauma. Today's conversation isn't about headlines or scandal. It's about the human story behind them, about resilience, survival, and about what happens when someone finally decides to speak their truth. Rod, thank you for being here today, and welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30.
Thank you very much for having me, Fran.
You're very welcome. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I do want to thank you for being here today, because what we're going to talk about and what you've endured over the years is not an easy thing to do. But Rod, before we talk about the difficult parts of your story, I'd really like to explain for people so that they can understand you as a person. When you think back to young Rod growing up, what kind of kid were you?
I came from a loving family. I had two older brothers. I was the youngest. Dad was a hard-working livestock agent, so he travelled a lot. And Mum was a doctor's assistant and hard-working. And we had a normal upbringing around the Beaumaris area.
And what role did sport play in your life growing up?
Sport for me was everything. As I got older, I realized Dad was a fantastic sportsman himself. He was off zero scratch at golf. He was an A-grade pennant player. He was an ice hockey player. He was billiards. He was a great sportsman, and Mum was pretty handy at sport herself. But that's all I remember, playing with a football. I played cricket, but my main goal was, what I loved most was football, or VFL football at the time.
And what did that represent to you at that time?
Well, it was somewhere where I could get away from situations that I couldn't control, and I could vent my frustration or my, I was, as you'll find out, I was pretty big kid when I was growing up, and I used to have a temper when I was younger. Still do have a bit of a temper. Growing up, I was always the biggest sort of kid in that age group, and but it was just a place that I could get away from, from adults, as we'll find out why.
When did you realise that AFL level football, or VFL level at that point, I suppose, when did you realise that might actually be possible, that you were pretty good at this?
Not to be too much ego, but I I was pretty much a standout from 9 years of age. I was able to kick left and right and handball left and right at 9, and I was playing Little League a year when I was 9. So I played 3 years of Little League, and that's when they picked the best sides, the best side they could in the area. So St Kilda area had people in my area, and then say Richmond had their area, but they picked the best sides in the area that they could. So I ended up playing 52 Little League games over 3 years. And then when I was 12, we moved out of Beaumaris area into Melbourne's area. And I got a phone call, or Dad got a phone call from St Kilda saying they wanted to sign me to a Form 4, which was if I ever made league football, I would play for St Kilda. So I had a fair indication then that I was, a high chance of making the grade.
I mean, you eventually made it to the elite level with St Kilda, and for many young athletes, that's the ultimate dream. What did it feel like walking into that world for the first time?
Into seniors level? It was, I remember the first training session we had was 3 of us from the under-16s training, and we had to do 2 laps around the tan track in the city, and we got past 1 lap and we were way behind, and one of the boys said, "Come on, let's walk." So we all started walking up the hill, Anderson Street Hill, and lo and behold, I'd look around and here's the coach right behind us with another player going, "You ever stop again and you may as well just piss off." So we started running, and that was the first wake-up call that I was, in the big league, and there's no cutting corners.
And what pressure did you feel as a young player?
Pressure was immense. My father was dying of cancer at 15 when I started training with the seniors, and that was his last dying wish. Yeah, he just loved St Kilda, and I remember going back there now, remembering that his loyalty was second to none. He was just so loyal, and that's a trait I possess as well, which is sometimes good and sometimes it works against you. But yeah, he just wanted to see me, play in the St Kilda Guernsey and that. So it was overwhelming really to see him watching me train, and also me knowing that he was going to die soon was a bit hard to take. And then he did die 2 months before the start of the season when I was just turned 16, I was still 15, but just turning 16.
Oh, that must have been really difficult for you.
Yeah, it was. It was a really difficult time for all of us, no doubt, but especially with added pressure of training with seniors, doing school, and having him pass away. Yeah, it was pretty tough.
I'm sure it was. And Rod, one of the reasons that this conversation matters so much is because so many survivors carry their experiences silently for years, sometimes decades. Without going into anything that you're not comfortable with sharing, when did you first realize that the experiences you had earlier in life were affecting you in ways you couldn't ignore?
I just tried to put them aside, to block them out. It's hard to explain. You've been violated. It's wrong. I went home one night, I think I was about 9-ish or something, and said to Mum, I've been, abused, I've been touched or something like that. And she, obviously working jobs and busy and all that, just said, "Don't be stupid, Roderick," and walked out. And that sort of shut that down. But I mean, with me coming out and telling my story, it's enabled so many other kids to bring out their stories and their parents. No one knew. That's the thing I'm hearing, that no one was able to tell other people, or tell of the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, what they were going through. And I'll jump ahead here. Hit rock bottom nearly 7.5 years ago.
No, go.
I hit
Keep going.
rock bottom 7.5 years ago, and as I was, I was trying to kill myself on alcohol and drugs and Oxycontin and whatever else I could put in my body. And the voice in my subconscious said, "Get up and start fighting, fight this." And since that day happened, that's what I made a pledge to myself and to my family and my partner and my fiance that that's what I was going to do, and this is where I am now. And it's exposing and shining light on this disgusting, pedophile organisation.
And if you go back to that time, to young Rod, did you understand what had happened at the time, or did it actually take years to really process it?
Well, it's wrong. I knew it was wrong, but we didn't have a voice back then. No one wanted to know, and it wasn't just one teacher at the school. There was a mob of them. I mean, there was Mitchell, McGregor, Ray. There was 3 or 4, 5 teachers at Beaumaris Primary. So, wow, what I've found out, they used to all sit in the corner of the teacher's room, and so they wouldn't have. Where would have it gone at that time of life for us? Like we were. I was 9, 10, 11, Beaumaris Primary. Parents just wanted to go through and, not make a scene, or the teachers used to come to our place. That's the thing. Parents and teachers were
How
friendly.
did that feel? That feel that your parents didn't actually, obviously, know. I'm assuming you don't think they knew.
No, well, I think my dad did. In the end, in the end of 77, I said, something's not, this is what's going on, and another mother came down and grabbed, in Kilda Little League training, grabbed 2 boys, 2 kids that were training, brothers, and yelled out and said, "You'll never touch my children again." So back, 77 was the time when Ray and Mitchell were exposed. But you know what happened to them? I found out they got moved to another school. We got told that they'd moved, been extradited overseas or something. Some story came up, and as kids we thought, oh, well, good, they won't be able to do it again. But he got one moved to Glen Waverley, and the other, I don't know what happened to him.
So you found this out years later.
Years later.
At that time, you was there a sense of relief that they were out of your immediate environment?
Time, yes, yeah. And there was no, mobile phones or, like travelling from Beaumaris to the city was an epic journey back in those days.
Yeah.
Like 40 years ago, so much has modernised.
So much has changed.
Yeah, and children are allowed to, have an opinion and allowed to be heard, or, now. Good in some cases and not so good in others.
But it probably would have made a big difference to your situation and the situation of others.
Yes.
Although, would it? I mean, are these people that are in a position of trust, often the adults are the ones that are believed?
Back then, 100%, because they had the boy who cried wolf and all these sort of stories that benefited the pedophile, regime, if you'd like to call it that.
So going forward, well, I mean, so, obviously you were in this environment in your primary school, but you were also in this environment going through in your football, which, as you said before, was your release. That was your place where you could actually go out there, but that wasn't the case, was it?
No.
On the field,
no,
it was?
On the field it was. But, then I was, I was the kid who, who wanted to, was obviously very good at football, but then opposition players wanted to attack, and I had parents kill him and bash him. And so the ugly parent syndrome was huge back in the day. But not only it's laughable what happened, but one of my perpetrators was a coach of the opposition club. He was my little league coach, and his brother-in-law was the umpire in the Saturday competition. They were both teachers at Beaumaris Primary. So wherever I went, from school to go and play sport, they were there. They were there.
And how did you cope with that? What were the actual coping mechanisms that, because you're still here and you're still here now to talk about this. But back then, what was happening for you? What was happening?
Well, I don't know, Fran. It's a great question. Resilience. No, I used to go on school holidays. I'd always go with my old man, my dad, to drive up the bush, and he worked at an abattoir, and I used to go take it out on. Sorry if this offends anyone, but I used to do a lot of killing of pigs and work in the abattoir and sewing pigs' heads and just taking it out on on pigs. And I don't know, it's trying to take my mind all the way back to how I coped, and it was just I never went to school classes. I'd always stay out from grade 4 to 5. I just wouldn't go to class. I just helped the sports teacher, and one of the perpetrators was the library teacher, so I wouldn't have to go there or dodge the other teachers. So, and then in the end of grade 6, I got expelled before the end of the school. So that's how much I love primary school. And then dealing with it, I don't know, Fran. It's I'm still trying to deal with it now. It's just trying to. Now I've realised it's one day at a time, where I just used to douse myself with alcohol and drugs. So I coped from 15 to. I had a few times when I could get off the alcohol and the drugs, but pretty much was stuck in that cycle of addiction.
So, Rod, for many survivors, the hardest part isn't necessarily the events themselves. It's the years that follow. How did those experiences actually affect your life as you got older?
I'd say only since I've been in recovery have I really tried to deal with the emotions and the feelings and even know what they are. They were just escapism was, picking up a drink. And once football finished and that high life, the only job I could do was where, you're allowed to drink while you work, and that was concrete. So that's why I became, a concreter and just lived that lifestyle of dousing myself in alcohol and drugs.
And how did it affect, other areas? How did it affect the way that you trusted, or your relationships, or your own self-worth?
Oh, well, self-worth was something I struggled with. People might, scoff at that and say you're kidding, but I mean the bravado and all that was all alcohol fuel. The courage, nobody saw what it was like coming down, on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, trying to build yourself up for Thursday, and then Friday, you were just hoping that you could get through a game. It's the feelings of it was tough. It was tough. I lost my train of thought there, Fran, where I was going.
Okay, you're all right. No, I mean, we're talking about the problem with this situation is that it doesn't affect one part of your life.
No, it's a progression. It's like my alcohol and drug abuse. It starts off as, one session, and then it goes to 2 sessions, and then, the reality is rock bottom. And that's pretty much where my life headed. I got to after my old man died. Before then I was at school. I went to Mentone Grammar where abuse happened there as well, but I was put on a daily intensive report card for each class because I was disruptive. I was telling teachers to get effed and all that, and getting caned and detentions. But the only thing that got me through was being a good sportsman at school, and that's where teachers sort of relented a little bit. Football was my calling, and that's what being abused and all that, it weakens you mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I do credit all my injuries to the fact that being abused as a child didn't enable my body to grow the way it could have, it should have, or it might have. But who's to know how my sporting career would have ended up without, if these monsters hadn't abused myself and the hundreds of other children at Beaumaris and other places.
And how does that make you feel now, looking back at that?
I've done the 12 steps of recovery, so I'm not meant to hang on to resentments or all that, but I can't. It just eats at me. It really does. I just started doing the 12 steps again to try and work out what's happening. You feel betrayed. You feel mentally, your soul's taken from you, your innocence. I get emails from blokes who have, written to me saying, Rod, thanks for speaking up. You've helped, blah, blah, blah. And that nobody knows what it does, and you're the only one who understands. But, for anyone who's watching this and needing to speak up, do yourself a favour and get some help, because it will take your life. I've had numerous suicide attempts. I'm just not courageous enough to finish it, but I had enough drugs and pills one session to. I must have a lot of a strong constitution, as one mate said, because it was ridiculous what I tried to do. Yeah, that's what it does. It just eats at you, and you just got to try and move forward. What I'm trying to do is at least get justice. That's my main goal here, and to bring those that were able, who did the molesting and who are the pedophile organisation, just bring them down. It's just a death sentence. I've lost 5, 6, 7 that I know of who've committed suicide, and who I've got another 5 or 6 who are just, and there's many more, no doubt, who drink and drug every day to numb themselves. So that's what
let's talk about that. I mean, 8 years ago, the light went on for you, and you thought you went through the recovery process, and you're how many years sober now, Rod?
I am 7.5 months, 7 years, 6 months.
7 years, 6 months. Amazing. That's incredible. And now, I mean, you are a strong voice. You've become a strong voice. And how does it make you feel that people reach out to you, knowing that you've given them a voice that they're able to use now?
I'm humbled that anyone wants to listen to for a start, but it's humbling. But I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that I'm able to be in this position. And what sparked me into realizing how FUCKED I was I was walking down the street with my fiance, and we were not in a good place. We were off our heads. And lo and behold, here's my eldest daughter walking towards us with her friend at the time. And I've just got, "Hey, Lay, how you going?" And she looked at me and said, "I fucking hate you." I went, "Huh?" And she punched me. Gave me a good one in the stomach. And that was what flicked the switch, because I never wanted to bring a daughter into the world that hated her father. And I went home and punched a wall or two and broke my hands, and I was just in tears, and it was time to do something. And it was amazing, turning, there's moments in your life that you remember more than others, but that one really sticks solid in my mind, that was the turning point to get help.
I love that, Rod. And I just want to pause here for a moment, because conversations like this are incredibly important, because for decades, many men, particularly in sport, were taught to stay silent, to toughen up, to never talk about pain. But the reality is that silence often keeps trauma alive, and the courage it takes to speak about it publicly is enormous. So, Rod, what gave you the strength from that to finally speak?
I had to dig deep and find out who I am, who I was meant to be, and I knew what was holding me back. Why I got sacked from St Kilda in 1990, halfway through the season. I rang the coach and I said to the coach, it's either me or Peter Hudson who goes. And he was a coach, and here I was thinking they'd sack him over me. That's pretty entitled, but anyway. And he said, come in and we'll have a chat about it. And I said, good. And I, went out on, probably got spastic the night before and went in there, and he just kept hounding me. He's asking me, what's the problem? What's the problem? I said, I can't do the training. I'm, alcoholic. I drink too much and I'm on speed and bongs and all that, amphetamines and all that. And he said, oh, right. Nothing else? And I said, no, it's just the drugs and the alcohol. And that's as far as any interview I'd done before. I'd only go back to as far as my dad dying, the trauma of that, and never went any further past that. Anyway, they came back and he sat down it came to my mother's house and sat down in the lounge room with another bloke and said, we're sacking you immediately. I said, well, get the fuck out of the house. And that was it. No offer of, you need support, you need help, you need that's it. And I joined St Kilda. I signed with St Kilda at 15, and at 24, I was sacked.
Wow. So you've had 9 years. And at that point, I mean, obviously that rings in your ears. When you say, when he asked you, what else? Is there anything else that you need to talk about? What do you think he meant by that?
No, he didn't care. He did not care one bit, because I would not change my habits. And I look back and I understand now, but to the same point, they're the worst sporting organisation I've ever known. Some of the people that have been associated with St Kilda Football Club, you just shake your head at some of the names I've got on this bit of paper, how they've been employed or in high positions there. But I refuse. I couldn't stop numbing myself. And that's the thing that I've been able to do now. And God knows, why I couldn't when I was younger. But
why do you think that you couldn't talk out about that?
it was a taboo subject. There was no one used to. I'm sure I would have, when I was in my drunken stupors and benders that used to go 4 or 5 days, that I would have told people, but in that state, they either didn't remember or didn't care, or didn't carry on with it. But the first real time that was when I was in court, that my solicitor mentioned it in the assault that I went to jail for, that he was sexually abused as a child, and the judge, Betty King, said, well, he's not here for sexual abuse, or that's not in, he's here for assault. And that was swept under the carpet as well. So they just kept
legally was true.
Sorry.
So when you decided to to actually tell the truth about what happened, was there still fear around actually speaking publicly? Were these people still around you?
I spoke, this is, 2021, when Russell Jackson from the AVC rang me up, and I wanted to tell my story. I went into rehab in 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I was in there for 3 months, and then I was trying to find someone, for the first year, you're just still shaky, they call it white knuckling for the first 5 years of recovery. But in 2021, I sat down with Russell and told my story. But even when I told my story to Russell, I minimalised it. I didn't want the world thinking, oh, this bloke's fucked up. He's a weird MF and all that. And back then, you didn't want to tell when I was younger, but in Collingwood, imagine running out in Victoria Park and people knowing that story. They would have would have been unbearable.
And what would what were the emotions that you were feeling, or you would have been feeling at that point had you come out back then? What did it leave with you? What was the residue that was left with you after the abuse?
I was your self-worth, your guilt, your embarrassment. It's just your shame. It's just all these emotions running around. And, why me? It's just, but then when I went out in the footy field, I could do some amazing things, and it was my sanctuary where, I used to play. I used to train every night at different clubs, and then I used to play Saturday and Sunday games. People wonder how come he played footy at 16. Well, there was a fair bit of training going into it, and even when I was, I used to kick the footy out in the street or outside in the park, or excuse me, that's what it was. It was my life, sport. Yeah.
So do you still? That's all right. Do you still worry about how people respond?
No. The 12 steps of recovery, and what I've, now I don't fear what anyone says, or we're here for a short time on this earth, and I'm just so grateful that the belt I had around my neck when I was hanging off a door didn't find the hole. I'm so glad grateful the drugs didn't kill me, because I had enough OxyContin to destroy a few people. But and I think it's all for the higher power up above. This is my purpose, to help others and help myself find justice. I really think there'll be a book coming, and then I think someone's got to do a movie or something on. They just couldn't believe what's happened in Victoria, let alone Beaumaris Primary. And then, I had a crush on a girl in grade 3. I was in grade 4, and she used to live 2 streets from me. And I used to walk past her place every day to go to footy training. Eloise Wallage, who was taken 50 years ago and never been found. Yeah, the place is it's got a lot of history, and none of it good. None of it good. So there's that reason. Sorry.
No, go. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say that's enough in itself to to seek justice, and hopefully they find some idea what happened to Eloise as well.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope everything that gets uncovered, because there was clearly a lot going on down there, and people know. There are people that know.
Yeah, well, I've heard. Yeah, I'm in contact with a lot of people, and one of the theories was there was a lot of swingers back in the day, swinger parties and all that. So there was a lot of the 70s. Who knows? It's a weird place, Beaumaris. I tell you, I refuse to go near it. That just brings up PTSD for me. I haven't been through.
Yeah. And no need to go back there. I mean, when someone carries trauma for a long time, Rod, healing's rarely a straight line. And, what has helped you most on your healing journey?
Without a doubt, transcendental meditation, ice baths. There's a man called Wim Hof who I follow his breathing techniques, and Eckhart Tolle. I read a lot of spirituality books, and his book The Power of Now, and that's very hard to do, to live in the now, but when I do remember to live in the now, you just forget about the past, and you don't look into the future, because the past is full of regret, and looking ahead is full of anxiety and fear. Not to say I don't do it, but I've got these mechanisms, I've learned, and the ice bars is just amazing.
You can't be anywhere else when you're in the ice.
You cannot be anywhere else. You think? You wish you were. And that's the power of the ice. Like Wim Hof saw his wife jump off a building and commit suicide, and he's bounced back and been this amazing human and helping others, discover the power of ice and that. So I can't recommend it enough.
No, I agree with you. I'm a big Wim Hof fan.
Yeah.
Looking back on everything, on everything that you've been through, how has your definition of strength changed?
I honestly believe the 12 steps of recovery has given me a strength just to feel comfortable in my own skin at times. Look, there's no doubt that there's good days and bad days in recovery. But, I have this routine and, I wake up in the morning and I meditate and then do an ice bath or a cold shower and then, just read a daily reading in the JFT and that starts my day off. And that's a strength that, I'm grateful for. Like going back 8 years ago, the first thing I would have done was pick up a form guide and a beer. And that's how bad I was I couldn't get out of the house without a drink or a line of something to get me going. So that's a strength that I never thought would be possible, but it's a one day at a time process, and that's all I live by.
What does resilience actually look like to you now?
Resilience is just, for me, just trying to be a better person each day than I was yesterday. And I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I have my good days and bad days, and I do get angry at drivers and all that sort of stuff when I'm driving, say some things I shouldn't. But it's just, look, I wouldn't change the world for anything where I am in recovery. It's not easy, but my fiance and myself are both, in recovery, and we don't do meetings. We just have a meeting by ourselves. You only need two people to have a meeting, and we sit down and we talk. And sometimes she says some things that I don't really want to hear. That's growing. That's growth, and that's beautiful. It really is. Two people who love each other can, say the truth, and there's no hiding behind smoke screens or whatever they want to. Whatever you want to call it, but it's just waking up and saying, today's a new day and I'm going to be sober, clean and sober.
That's the strength in itself, isn't it? When you look at where you've been and the experiences that you've had, the bad experiences that you've had through there, you obviously are very proud of yourself that you've come through that and you're able now to look yourself in the mirror and actually say, I've done it.
It's funny you say that, Fran. Like, I couldn't look myself in the mirror 7.5 years ago without, looking away. But now, one of the things they do in rehab is you have to write your story to your drug of choice. And then you had to sit in front of a mirror while there was, the other 15 people in the room. And it was powerful. I started sweating and a lot of people don't like rehabs, but I loved it. I needed it. It was just something I just was sick and tired of hiding behind this false person. I wasn't me. I was hiding something and I was being, molested all my school life and what it does to you. And I just needed to and wanted to, not necessarily, I didn't know it was going to help anyone. I didn't know the extent of this, scourge. But, I'm so grateful that I did find the courage. And the night before the article was coming out, I did ring Russell and say, I don't want it to come out. I'm full of anxiety and fear and what's going to happen. He said, too late. They've already printed it. And I went, oh, well, that's good then. And yeah, it was.
That's it then.
Great. Look, it was an amazing one that I wasn't, totally expecting, the extent of damage that has been done.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously when that article came out, as you said, you were still filled with a huge amount of anxiety. And a lot of people, that would be a very, very normal reaction to what you've been through, and it suddenly being highlighted in the press. What do you wish now?
What do I wish for now?
Yeah. What do you wish now that, had that had happened sooner?
Well, it was my calling, the higher power stuff sort of, hitting rock bottom, being told to fight, get up and fight. So, of course, now, yes, I do. I wish I had the courage, and not worry what might have happened, what might have been said. Yeah, St Kilda, even now, their response to it was they rang me up and said they want nothing to do with me. First of all, I got a letter of apology, which was frivolous. I mean, it said sorry after about 7 lines, or it's terrible what's happened, blah, blah, blah. They took the 2 pedophile Briggs and Gravel down off the Life membership board 3 months or something like that after my story, so it wasn't immediate. And I've lost my train of thought again there. It's they get me that
Right.
far.
So if you do you wish that, you'd had the courage to come out sooner? And I
Yeah.
guess the reason I'm asking that is because there will be people out there who have not yet found that courage. They haven't yet, but they're living with that trauma. They're living every day with not having found the voice. What would you want to say to those people?
Well, for me personally, it's just a weight lifted off my shoulders, to discover, to bring it out in the open. Yeah, it's something I really wish I could have done earlier. The history of shows that it's around 35, 40 years before someone who's been abused, comes out and tells their story. It's a lot. It's a lot to hang on to. I know that.
Mm. Mm.
And am I fully recovered? No. And it's a one day at a time program. But I'm a lot better than what I was 8 years ago. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And Rod, this podcast is called What I Wish I Knew at 30. If you could sit down with your younger self, the version of you around 30, what would you want him to know?
Don't handball, just kick goals. Just be true to yourself, and just find the courage to just be honest, willing, and open. And that's what recovery has given me. Strength, the courage to overcome your fears, and really don't care what other people think, because we are on this earth for a very short time. And then 4 or 5 days after you're gone, they'll move on. They'll move on, and that's just a fact of life. So one thing I really hope this podcast does is shake the trees, and more people come out with names and their own life story, what happened.
And looking back now, I mean, if you could say to anyone else that's going through this, that is actually sitting on the fence about whether to come forward, whether to speak up, what would you want them to know?
Well, they could get in contact with Russell Jackson, who's with ABC, or they can get my email, or we can point them in the right direction. Or the Socket Police Task Force is the Sexual Offenders Crime Integrity Unit, or something like that. But they've been fantastic. They've taken all our statements and all that, and they're very caring and show a lot of compassion. I wish I could say the same about lawyers, but anyway, that's another story for another time. But
Another one.
yeah.
But what's the most important thing that you want people to know about this, about how you've come forward, the trepidations that you had before you spoke up?
Look, you will be believed. You will be believed, and look, it's helped me move forward to a better place, and I can look myself in the mirror today, knowing that there aren't any more dark secrets. I've pretty much, although I minimalised, a lot of it, there's still there's still some more statements and more stuff to come out, but for anyone who is holding on to what happened to them, just the best thing to do, my advice would be to get in contact with Russell Jackson or the soccer team, and if need be myself, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Thanks, Rod. Rod, what you've shared today takes enormous courage. And stories like yours help others realise they're not alone. And perhaps the most powerful thing about conversations like this is that they remind us that strength isn't about silence, it's about truth. Thank you so much for trusting me with your story. And I really just want to thank you for being so honest, for being vulnerable. I know this isn't an easy topic to talk about. This is your life that we're talking about and the burden that you've carried. And I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on to What I Wish I Knew at 30 and for sharing that with us. And to everybody out there, as Rod said, if you're carrying your own burden, find someone to talk to. And there are people, and when this goes live, we will make sure that those tags are there so that anyone who wants to reach out can reach out to Rod Owen, to myself, Fran Harper, to Russell Jackson at ABC. And Rod, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we conclude?
No, that's pretty much it. But I'd just like to say how grateful I am that you've given me the time and the opportunity to come on your podcast, Fran. It is hard to talk about, and I get lost with at times and drift off, but that could be too many concussions as well. I really am grateful for the time that you've given me. So thank you, because we need to shine light on this and bring them out of the dark. Expose them and make pay. So thank you, Fran.
Thank you so much, Rod. Thanks for your time and thanks for sharing.